All right, welcome to another episode of the Kink Tank. We're having way too much fun even before the broadcast begins. This topic is something that I wanted to discuss for mainly for people, looking to get into kink or coming to their first parties and whatnot, because they see these people lugging in suitcases full of toys. And, that's always kind of a rite of passage, like, ooh, what's in there? And then they pull out, $2,000 worth of stuff. And that's kind of intimidating to people, like, wow, I'm not rich enough to be doing any of this stuff. So I wanted to do a little episode here about just the essentials. What do we need? What do people generally put in their toy bags? What are good items? If you don't have a few grand to drop on it, what are some of the best things that you can put in there, either for cheap or because they are necessary to have? So, who would like to start? What's in your toy bag? I feel like the Capital One. What's in your wallet? What's in your toy bag?
Well, can I throw out, like, I tend to think of with a toy bag, like when you're starting to stock a toy bag, you want to think of it in, like, categories. Like, it seems like kind of a hodgepodge of shit when you look at people, especially those people who have giant suitcases. But the reason you have all this random stuff is because there are kind of different things that you go for with different kinds of toys. So, like, there's, like, the sensory category. There's, like, pointy, hurty little things. There's, like, impacty things. And then there's, like, grab bag things.
Those are
To use the technical terminology, yes, that's,
Yeah, pretty much.
grab
That's
baggy things.
Thank you. That's weird.
The safety
Some
category.
things are going to sound random, but they fit into. I find that lots of them fit into these categories. It helps me to think about them when I make my toy bag.
Yes.
Yeah, and then I think there's two other good categories, which are safety category and the aftercare category.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a thought that maybe Josie could make like a dietary triangle with like the different little subjects you could
One exists.
remember to put into studies.
I'll make it for you, Aaron.
Well, I would also put a category in there for cleanliness or sanitation, because I feel like, well, in my toy bag, I think condoms are a great idea. You can get them free most places. You go to any gay bar, they're like laying out in bowls on them. You just snatch a few of those, put them in your toy bag, because they can be really good, even if your play isn't so sexual per se. They are good barriers, for any other kind of, penetrative sex toy, for instance. So keep those handy, and especially if you're talking about, toys that you're going to use on more than one person. Put a bag on it. Put a bag on it so that, the next customer doesn't have to deal with that. So condoms, cheap, easy.
So the condom is like the hand sanitizer of the BDSM world? It's like everybody should just have a little thing
No,
there.
the hand sanitizer is the hand sanitizer of the BDSM world. The condom is a really nice, easy clean up before the sanitizer.
I was going to ask, is there certain chemicals that will react? I read a couple articles by Violet Blue, and they talked about different chemicals reacting in toys. There was like some cyber skin that used to be a little notorious, and it would like melt anything that was silicone.
Right. Well, and some of those too, some of the like jelly type sex toys are really hard to clean. But a condom is generally not going to have toxic stuff. If you're, you know, if you're putting, spraying it with Lysol or something, probably not a good idea, but there might be chemicals in there that will hurt your toys.
I just felt that.
So the condom thing, I think, is, have a few of them. They don't take up much space, so at least have, a few handy. Regardless of your power orientation or gender or your sex parts. Doesn't matter. Have some. What's next? What else would you put in your toy bag?
Well, Bella hit on it. I think one of the most important things to put in your toy bag is a first aid kit. Mine includes Band-Aids. I have these neat little like surgery prep pads that are just alcohol pads. Aloe vera. I think I have
some aspirin.
Sure, a lot of that will depend on.
Ibuprofen's another good one to have in there.
Jesus.
Sure. I mean, for me, I like some Tums in my toy bag. You never know when it's going to ruin a scene. No, that will depend on a lot on the type of play that you do. So if you do fire cupping, yes, you'd want to have some kind of, burning aid in case something got too hot or you cause a blister or something. But yeah, the basics and band-aids and little antiseptics and, um, if butterfly bandages. I mean, you could get really carried away with this stuff, and you could say, well, you need to have gauze and all, just like basically a whole suitcase just for first aid. Well, that depends on what, if you're mostly into spanking, you're probably not going to need all that. But
Yeah, but think basic first aid kit, the kind you can get you can get them pre put together at places like Walmart for like $3.
Yes.
Take no effort.
Yeah, having something like that is a good idea. I also think for specific medical issues. So if you have asthma, you're going to want to have your inhaler in there. If you have an allergy to something, if there's medicine for that, or as we were talking about before, EpiPen, if somebody's going to crack open the bag of peanuts in the play space, and maybe you ought to have that handy. Diabetes, if you might have something to eat. You might have something, sugary or substantial, in case you have, what's the condition where the...
Hypoglycemia?
Thank you. Hypoglycemia.
But I don't think that's just for diabetes either. I keep hard candy in mine all the time. I don't have any blood sugar issues, but sometimes you can have one, you get too excited, or you just candy. People like to play with you, too, when you keep candy in your bag. Just saying.
Yeah, I was going to say, those
Really
ring pops in your toy bag are really for, like, sugar issues.
They're totally for sugar issues.
Well, and that's a very real thing, and I know Bella will back me up on this. We've both had people go hypoglycemic on us during scenes, and it's not fun. So get your bottoms, make sure your bottoms eat beforehand, but it's also not a bad idea to have some candy or some orange juice or something something nearby.
Wait, is that when I actually just saw 2 weeks ago this I was in a class and this girl's face just went like white as a sheet like within like 10, 20 seconds.
Well, that's
Like,
panic. You need Klonopin for that.
No, it wasn't panicking. I don't know what it was. It was something sugary.
Pale and sweaty and dizzy. Those are all symptoms of hypoglycemia.
Yeah, we had to call the nurse and they gave her like a salad and some cookies or something. Mm. Yeah. I've never seen it before. It freaked me out a little bit.
Knowing your own medical issues, and I really feel like, unless you have a relationship with, a substantial relationship with the person that you're playing with, not just like the person that you met at the dungeon that night that you wanted to play with, I feel like you need to take responsibility for yourself in this case. So, for one, it's not just dominants that carry toy bags. And that's the big one that I see. It's like the submissives are like, well, whatever they're going to play with me, they're going to bring it along. I don't have to. Well, some of this first aid stuff that we're talking about, take responsibility. It's like, women carrying condoms in their purse. Like, why would I need to do that? Well, take control.
Yeah, I would actually think really highly of a girl who took some responsibility and carried some stuff with her. With that, I think that'd be really awesome.
Especially for herself, if you have medical issues. I mean, it would be great to, tell your top of some of these things. But, if you have an inhaler tucked away, let them know that's where it is, and you might need it. So having those things are good. I also think, just as far as like cheap, all-purpose, never know when you're going to need them things, sanitary, like Clorox wipes. And some people have baby wipes for like little messes and things like that. That's a good idea too, because that's like, nicer on your skin. And but for cleaning furniture and disinfecting odd little things, having some Clorox wipes is a good idea. How about lube? You guys carry lube in your...
I was hoping somebody's going to bring that up because the girls would appreciate it. Guys coming around with the lube.
A lot of guys would appreciate it too.
Lube is messy. I carry it. I usually have it, but I have to put it in a Ziploc baggie because it always busts on me. Always.
Oh my God! Only one Ziploc bag. You should put it in 2 or 3. That's my experience.
I found individually wrapped. They look like ketchup packets, and they're
Oh no! Never use those.
Oh, that's a good plan.
Terrible.
Yes,
Get
they're
a bottle that closes solidly.
Yeah. And often you can find...
even a Ziploc.
Yeah, often you can find those in the same fish bowl at the bar that you find the condoms in.
Yep.
Grab a couple of those too. But, let Never know when you're going to need it. Have it handy. Doesn't take up much space either. So we're not talking about, you know, by the time we're done here, you're going to have a giant suitcase full of stuff that you may or may not need. Some of these are real itty bitty things that are, piece of cake to just tuck into a bag or purse.
Don't put the silicone lube next to the silicone toys. It will eat the toys up.
Yeah, see, that's
You've
what
got to
Aaron
check to
was
see if
talking
it's
about
water.
earlier.
Yeah, you got to check to see if it's water.
Will melt.
All right. Any other suggestions? I mean, as far as like, cleaning and safety precautions and medical things. Do we have anything along those lines? Because then we can talk about the actual fun stuff.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be kicked out of the rope community if I don't always suggest that anytime you're playing with rope, you have shears, safety shears, and/or seatbelt cutter or something like that.
That's a good safety precaution. I think that's probably a good thing to have in your toy bag, regardless, because you can cut through a lot of things if necessary. And almost any kind of bondage you might have somebody in, or if an article of clothing. Now, I'm not talking about that hot scene where you cut the clothes off them. I'm talking about when you need to cut their clothing off for some reason. Doesn't happen, often. It'll be like 1 in a million, but, again, cheap, doesn't take up too much space. Why not have a set handy?
I like that.
Yeah, and as far as toys go, I think probably if you said, you can have one toy and nothing else, I would probably go with a blindfold. I think that's a good one to put. I mean, it doesn't even have to be a blindfold. It can be something that's used as a blindfold. But I think that is, for just about any kind of scene that you're going to do, it can be a nice augmentation of it. And I know, Brian,
agree.
you're going to say next, a length of rope.
That's actually not true. That's actually not true. I'm gonna go more old school, and I'm gonna agree with your idea of a blindfold or a handkerchief, because I do a lot of rope, but I think that my favorite toys are my hands.
Add a blindfold to it.
and then they don't know it's coming, so you get the mind playing there, which is really my
Or as
game.
they say, they don't see when you smack yourself accidentally with the whip.
That's right.
They don't see all the confusion around the scene. You blindfold them, so they don't see how incompetent you really are.
Right, so that now I'm bleeding and I'm using my own first aid kit on myself.
Yeah,
What she doesn't know didn't happen.
They don't have to know any of that. Didn't happen.
I keep rubber bands. That's like my one thing. I'm new to all the other stuff. I don't do the whipping and too much bondage, but the rubber band at the right time is very effective.
Rubber band, good. I like it. I like clothespins.
I'm a big fan of a paint stir. It's just a cheap. I'm not an impact guy.
Nice.
But it's nice to have something for impact. And
I agree.
paint stirs usually you get them for free or about 50 cents.
And
It's
I'll
very
tell you what I like about the
inconspicuous
paint stir,
on the table.
or a really, really flimsy ruler, is when you're done, you can always break it over the person's hind end or whatever, right? Just for effect.
For effect, yeah. It's a good little effect.
Well, in the same vein, chopsticks are also useful and free. You can get them from most places. Just grab a few whenever you're there.
That's true. I have watched a couple people do some really, really neat scenes with chopsticks once they have their person kind of, bound up or restrained or whatever. I've seen some really interesting things done with a set of chopsticks, both wooden and metal.
I'll never look at chopsticks the same again.
Yeah, especially the ones that are connected on the
We
one
love
side.
you, lovely darkness.
They can kind of make clamps, but
Ouch.
no, I like clothespins, cheap. Anything that needs pinching or clippy clampy things, clothespins, and they're disposable. They can be single use if you need them to be. So, like you said, breaking the ruler over somebody, it's kind of disposable. You can burn through them and it doesn't really matter. Clothespins can be the same way. The length of rope, I wasn't joking about. I do think that is a great item, and some people might choose that as their, if they can only have one thing in their bag, it would be some rope because it's so versatile. And, in my case, when I carry some rope with me too, you just don't know when it's going to come in handy. It's like multi-purpose thing. You're like, this would fix this problem that I'm having right now.
Yeah, and a bundle of it, when swung, can be quite effective as a implement as well.
A rope whip, huh? Okay, interesting.
Anything else that you guys think? Oh, here's
I want to hear more about these big. I've never seen this big trunk that's going on. These kind of over elaborate things. I would like to see some of all this.
Well, yeah, we used to play in a dungeon space down in the bottom of a bar, and the owner knew, he was kink friendly. He was hosting our BDSM parties, and it was funny because when the doors opened and everybody came in, they all had these rolling suitcases behind them. He's like, "What the fuck is that? What are these?" And so they would stop at the sign-in table. So there was like a line of them along the wall in his bar with all these suitcases. He's like, "This looks like the flight to hell." Like the airplane, like everyone's getting on an airplane. It's like the sadistic, crazy flight to hell. But yeah, people do. Sometimes they need several cases. I mean, when you've been doing this for a while, you accumulate a lot of things. But, I just like to focus on stuff that can be done for cheap, stuff that doesn't, you don't need a trunk or, a big rolling suitcase to carry around, but that, can make you more ready for a good scene at any time. One of the things that I had sort of forgotten about that I think is necessary as far as the safety goes. First of all, padlocks are good. A set of small padlocks, little master, not the cheapy gumball machine ones, because those don't do shit, but an actual small little padlocks. But along with that is make sure you know where the keys to everything that you have are.
Please make it a second one.
Or have a kink-friendly locksmith nearby.
Like Red.
Oh, yeah. Do we have one of those?
Ray,
Wait, do
You
we?
are a locksmith. Or
I'm
bolt
waiting for
cutters.
somebody to lose a key. Yeah,
Bolt cutters will
idea.
work. And those are kind of disposable too. They don't cost very much. So if you like loan them out or lose one, it's not really such a big deal. You can key them. They come in sets that they can all take the same key. So you'll have like 8 keys for 4 padlocks that are all identical. So if you keep losing the keys or have trouble, keep multiple keys in different parts of your toy bag so you can find them.
All right, so I'm gonna throw another one out. This is a little bit more specific, but again can be used very, very it's not versatile, but it can be used in a variety of scenes. Similar to a blindfold, some sort of gag, a ball gag, a bit gag, something like that. That can really amp up a lot of the intensity, I think, for the bottom. And I think when used in combination with something like a blindfold and maybe a set of restraints, suddenly the mental safety kind of goes away a little bit. Now, again, if you're new, always work out some sort of safe word that other than a verbal word. So
I'd like to give a little idea here, and I've heard it. I heard it a few years ago, and I think it's amazing. Dropping the ball or the object. So instead of having a safe word, have her or him hold an object, and if she or he drops that object, then it's over. Therefore, if they pass out, they automatically drop it. Right.
Safe.
So
Safe
something
signal.
has an auto drop.
Put it in your hand too.
Right. A safe signal as opposed to a safe call. Good idea when you have a gag in your mouth. There was. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
It was kind of along those lines because we talked about blindfolds and now we're talking about gags. These are like small things that can sometimes change the vibe or the headspace or the thrust of the scene, the mindset. Thank you. I like to have a collar handy too. It's not for everybody, but sometimes that's like the thing that you can put on them that changes the whole thing. So I have actually I have a couple, but usually just kind of it's kind of it doesn't belong to anybody. It's my toy bag collar that I can pull out and put on somebody if that's what I think the scene calls for, or if they say that that would get them more in the zone. Collar.
Something else I think that's really good is like a Sharpie or lipstick or a marker.
I was gonna say that.
Yeah, I think that those are really good, whether it's artistic, like and you're drawing body art, or whether it's humiliation and you're writing slut across their face with lipstick, or you're numbering marks, on their body, those kinds of things. It just comes in handy.
You're so creative.
And,
And you know, when
that's
you,
such a great idea. Or can we get like a list of all these awesome ideas? I'm trying to.
well, it'll be up
Well,
on
she didn't
YouTube. You
just
can
put
watch the
those out
replay.
either. I've actually seen her do all of those.
Yeah.
Well, I'm still trying to get over Bella's boobs. She had her cam on before, and I'm thinking, wow, those boobs are like Avatar. But then she shows her avatar. And it shows up in the
Better.
middle of my screen, and then it like has these little things that looks like her boobs are talking. So, thanks for that, Bella. Appreciate that.
You're welcome, anytime.
I was about to say, a toy that I haven't seen, but I'm pretty sure it'd be very versatile, is those elastic bands they use whenever you're going through rehabilitation for a muscle injury.
Exercise band.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
can be used
the
to
really
stretch
thick
over
one?
the face.
Oh.
It could be snapped like a whip. Could be used as a restraint. And I'm pretty sure they're easy to get. I've just never seen anybody use them,
This
but
thing?
it does surprise me.
Yep, this thing right here. I just had one.
Is that somewhat like a tourniquet, or
No, it's real wide.
it's a huge
real
rubber band,
thin.
is what you're saying?
Yeah,
It's
pretty
a
much
little bit
what
different
it is.
material. It's more like a thin latex than it is a tourniquet's like a thicker rubber band material. This is a thinner
Yeah.
latex.
Yeah, like
Get them with weave
be
fit.
easier
It's pretty
if you
wide
play
too.
too
It's
rough.
pretty long.
But yeah, they're pretty easy
Yeah.
to come by, and would work in multiple scenarios.
Perfect. I also think that, well, in my toy bag, anyways, that I consider essential, even though I don't have to dive into them too often, are little connectors. Carabiners, chain links, lengths of chain, little D rings, and sort of those like a dog leash connector, the little pull ones. Several different kinds for different things. Panic snaps. Panic snaps are a really good one to have around too. That
What's a panic snap?
it's a quick release mechanism. If you have somebody, with you've got their arms above them or something like that, you can just pull it real quick and it comes down. But they can't undo it really. It kind of takes another hand to do it. So they call them panic snaps or panics something. Anyways, but having a small variety of these things to pick from, because you can do interesting things. Make your own little hog tie with a couple of connectors and a couple of links of chain. You can do it.
Yeah, and if you have cuffs to go with the collar that you're keeping in your toy bag, those things can keep those connected together if they don't already have something attached to them that will keep them together. You don't have to use your length of rope for that or something like that.
Right.
And just
And
in case
sometime-
anybody at home is keeping count, I don't think we've named anything yet that is over $15 in and of itself.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
I don't think
Nope.
so.
Yep.
I keep also a pocket knife, always. Sometimes, it's not necessarily, sometimes you can use it for actually cutting things, like, your rope is too long, or something like that if you don't want to use your scissors for some reason. It can also add kind of a fun, it looks scarier, and you can use it as kind of a sensation sort of a play. Obviously, you can cut people if that's what you're into, but you can kind of just scare people with it, or move around with
Yeah.
it, or do
That's why-
sensors.
Keep it slightly dull, if possible. Don't sharpen it in that case. But
It's
No,
a
I
great.
carry a machete and it's razor sharp, man. It scares
Yeah.
the piss out of people.
exacto.
Yeah, the knife is good post wax play. And then speaking of wax play, I do carry a candle or two different types of candles in my toy bag.
I did a scene one time in which I had to plan out, and I put some candles in my bag and some electric tape in my bag, and I never took them out, and I've pulled them out more times, quite a few times since, just kind of impromptu. Just some little votive candles and a roll of electric tape.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Just don't leave them in your car.
Yeah, duct tape's actually not a bad one to have in there. Surprised that hasn't come up.
How do we
Always
not
great
think
to hear
of
that sound. Duct tape
Yeah.
is great for scenes.
Oof.
I keep earplugs and then also a set of headphones. I've never really used them, but I've always thought it would be nice to have somebody put music in my ears that they wanted me to hear during a scene versus the bullshit that's
Interesting.
going on. So
Well,
it's-
and
Same with
it
the
drowns
blind
out.
mode. Deprivation.
Yeah, and earbuds, can work kind of like earplugs in themselves. It takes away you're not
Mhm.
able to hear what they're doing behind you.
Right.
The
That's a good
trouble
idea.
I the
Yeah,
trouble I
very
have
good.
with earbuds is you can't tell when they're in. I really prefer like a set of like can headphones, especially if I'm going for like deprivation play. So
Yeah.
I really prefer like either just can headphones or noise canceling headphones.
Yeah, I actually have
You can get
the
those for pretty cheap too.
the rifle ones, the hearing
It's
protectors.
big. Is it
That's
You're
orange?
awesome.
laughing. You're
That's
laughing,
So
awesome.
is
but
it
I
like the
do.
bright
No,
orange
that's
ones,
fucking
or
that's I like that.
So when you put like the little earplugs
love it.
in and then you put these over it, you really can't hear anything at all.
Anything
But
at all?
now we're talking. Now I wouldn't say that's a toy bag essential. The little bitty earplugs that Bella was talking about, good idea. Not very expensive. Doesn't take up much space, and you can take away their almost entire sense of hearing with
Hmm.
just those little plugs. So great suggestion. But let's talk a little bit. I think we've kind of talked about some of the cheap stuff that you can get the most mileage out of. Let's talk about when you do want to get into more like legit toys. Let's say stuff that you would expect to find in a kinky person's toy bag.
Sibian.
Um, maybe yeah. You need a Sibian. Everybody should have one of those.
Everybody should have a Sibian.
No, I'm saying like a flogger. Having a flogger in there is good. It's a common toy that a lot of people like to play with. So I would put that on the list. Whether it's essential or not depends on the kind of play that you're into. But I think it's a good basic thing to have in a toy bag.
I think it
Um,
is, and let me say this. I think that everyone should buy a cheap to medium uh, quality flogger just to play with, just to see, to get the hang of it, to make sure they like it, to make sure somebody else likes it. But don't buy a set. Like, don't like say, oh, I really like this one. Let's get another cheap one. I think once you get the feel for the cheap one, save your money, get a really, really nice one. I don't think it's worth it to take a bunch of different steps up to get to kind of the high quality flogger. Get one cheap one to make sure you like it, but then after that, go for the nice one.
yeah.
It's like your
And you'll
driving
see.
permit, and then you just need to go for the whole nice.
Well, you'll see that with experienced kinksters, buying floggers has become a bit of a fetish. Once you get into it, it's all nuanced. It's like, well, this one's moose hide, but this one's elk, and they're different. And they have different falls, different kinds of leather, different lengths, different weights. So they've got 25 different floggers in their toy bag. Not necessary. That's for the enthusiast. But I feel like one flogger ought to do the trick. Um, any other toys that you feel are kind of
I would
basic like
say a
that?
riding crop for
Good
sure.
one. Good one.
You can get them at Tractor Supply. You don't even have to go into like Cirillas to get a cheap flogger. You can get a riding crop for $15, $15 to $20 easily, and they've got a couple different styles there.
Yeah, don't buy it at a kink shop. Buy it at a tack shop, or because
Hmm.
there's a kink surplus tax on that. It's
It
like
won't have a little heart on it though.
right. It won't say love. Yeah.
Yeah,
Which is
actually,
too bad.
maybe you could take a minute just to kind of give audience members that are new to this kind of a compare and contrast between the different spanking tools. So like canes, floggers, whips. Maybe give us a little idea on what the differences are.
Well,
Should
let's
we do
talk
that?
about let's name some of these other ones. What are some other some of the basics? I don't really want to talk necessarily about yeah, I think that might be beyond the scope of this particular episode, but I think you'll see that with the types of toys that we're talking about, there's a pretty good variety in there. So a flogger, I had paddle, riding crop was another good one. Having some kind of paddle in there is a good idea. Um,
A
and
basic
this
cane is good too.
cane, and that can be done very cheaply as well.
Yeah, it can be a wooden dowel rod from Walmart. I know someone who that's some of his favorites.
I once just heard like this 30-minute rant from a BDSM master, as a friend of the family, and he was just adamant he had to go with canes. It was all cane. It
Yeah.
was just his thing. All canes. No whips, no floggers, no that's cane.
Well, that's not very interesting, but I get it. Everybody has their favorite toy, but I think for a basic toy bag, if he's really really into canes, and the person that he's trying to play with is really, really into floggers, it'd be nice if he had a flogger in that bag too. Just saying. Otherwise, you might not get to play with the person that you wanted to play with. Anything else? I thought the knife was good. Pocket knife is good, like as a utilitarian thing, but like a bigger sort of dagger for threatening
It's
or
for the
for
effect.
sensation for sensation play, or
Big
for
hunting
actual
buoy.
cutting.
Yep.
Yeah, it could be very intimidating. I know some people that have like crazy razor cut, weird shaped Klingon fucking swords in their toy bag. And yeah, those inspire fear and probably, a little bit of some people respond positively to that, let's say.
I think that a vibrator of some sort is a lot of fun, whether it's a little bullet vibe or the gold standard Hitachi. Those are good fun.
Agreed.
I'm also going to throw out there either just a feather or break out the entire feather boa if just to touch upon that sensation play.
Sure. Useful.
What am I also thinking of? The name is completely escaping me, but like everybody has one. It's the wheel.
The Wartenberg
Oh,
wheel.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Those are
What's it
so
called?
inexpensive, and everybody
Like
loves
$3
them. There's
on
a million
Amazon.
things you can do with it. I highly recommend that as a basic as well.
What's the name of the wheel?
The
Wartenberg.
wheel. And I have like 3 that are totally different. They're not all the same. They don't look the same.
I have 4 bags worth of shit, and I've never even once considered putting a Wartenberg wheel in there. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Get on it.
Fix
People
that.
like it.
Yeah. No, yeah. Well, I mean, those are
True.
designed by a neurologist to elicit pain. So.
Very fun thing.
I think it's also good to have some kind of restraints in there, some cuffs. We were talking about the collar. Josie, you brought up cuffs. I think a good set of cuffs for wrists and ankles, that's a good basic thing to have. Now, that doesn't always come cheaply, but I
Well,
think
you can always do that with like strips of Velcro. You can always go into a Hobby Lobby and get the long strips of Velcro and cut them to the length you need, and
well, sure.
that can be done cheaply.
Right. Yeah, if you're just looking to, restrain somebody and you're not using rope, you just need a way to, tie them down, get them to stop moving real fast.
Well, and I'd like
Velcro's
to
always
point
good
out
for
that if your options are, and clearly they are, if you need to restrain your bottom, your options are cuffs and or rope. If you are new, go with cuffs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Basics. Stuff that you couldn't do without or wouldn't want to do without.
Well, one of my favorite toys that, we're talking about I don't know. It's just one of my favorites, and I think it's really versatile, but it's pretty specific, is a violet wand or a neon wand.
Yeah.
It's not
That's great.
I mean, that's expensive.
That is not an essential.
No, it's not an essential, but it is very broad, and you can do a lot with it. And the neon wands are like $35, so they're not
Right.
And you make a point too that I know that some people's entire toy bag is violet wand shit.
Mm-hmm.
That is their toy bag. That is, that's the play they're interested in. And so they have a whole thing of little accessories and stuff and add-ons that they have. But yeah, for your average kinkster, that's quite an investment. And taking up space and stuff like that. If you have a certain amount of room to deal with, but yeah,
And I'm
you
going to
don't
be
have
honest. I have both. I have the cheap one and I have the real one. I won't travel with the real one. I don't want to. I don't want to have it get bounced around or have the probes break or so certainly there is validity to it if you really like it and you want to do a scene, but just in terms of, I'm going to a party, I don't know what I'm going to do, I'm going to throw a couple things in the bag, probably the violet wand would not be one I would pick.
Right.
Yeah.
But Bella, you do make a good point because you don't have to spend $1,000 on a fully decked out violet wand kit in a Anvil Road case. You can get a cheap neon wand and get really good play and sensations out of it.
Mm-hmm.
How about aftercare things? Is that something that should be in your
Cigarettes.
toy bag? Cigarettes.
Cigarettes.
Gotta have smokes in there. I agree.
Yeah.
Blanket,
Blanket.
Yeah.
and usually something sweet. I give the bottoms candy after rope, and they seem to like it. Peeps are a big hit. Something like that.
You're cheating. That's bribing.
Did you say peeps?
Peeps.
Yes, peeps. Tell him what kind of peeps.
Blue raspberry or sour watermelon peeps.
Gross.
Sour watermelon peeps are phenomenal. I'm going to go on record online right now.
Crack.
There it is. There it is. That's the best kept secret right there.
And for the record, they make a pretty good gag too.
I
You
like
shove
the
the whole
watermelon.
thing
There you
down in
go.
there.
I like the
I would
watermelon
cut it
peeps
out.
just because she hands out the sour watermelon peeps afterwards.
Also, peeps are fun to eat out of titties.
Out of titties. Okay.
It's
So
also
when
nice
they're-
to say.
I put one on a firecracker once. That was fun, but I don't think that I would use it as an aftercare thing. But I also
Don't
think they're
put firecrackers
gross.
in your kid.
A firecracker peep. I never even heard of that.
Well, you
I
probably
don't
never
like
heard of
peeps
peep
that
jousting
much.
either.
Oh Lord.
That takes
Peep
some
I had them
rice
left
to
over
That is
for
definitely
Easter.
not going in my kit.
So I think along with we were talking about specific medical issues. If you have asthma, you're going to want your inhaler. If you have a specific kind of aftercare that you like, don't depend on your partner for that. If you like a cigarette afterwards, make sure you have cigarettes in your bag. If you like sour candy after a scene, have sour candy in your bag. But to expect somebody else to just be carrying some of that very specific shit around is probably not going to, do it for you.
If we're talking about some of the things that we want to have in the aftercare bag, some kind of hydration, whether it's just a bottle of water, Gatorade. Some people hydrate with Mountain Dew.
Yeah, if you can't expect to have that at the space, if you're in your house or whatever, you don't necessarily have to lug liquid around with you. But if you're going camping and you're going to be playing out in the woods, yeah, that'd be a good idea.
I keep a water bottle all the time.
I'd
Or
usually
as
keep
Shane
some in my
said-
vehicle.
Or as Shane says, if you need Gatorade heated to 42 degrees Fahrenheit, yeah, take care of that yourself because that's very fucking specific. What are some other common aftercare things? I mean, the blanket, yes, sometimes. With some people, it's like a stuffed animal or something that they like to cuddle with.
I feel like with rope, a lot of bottoms want pictures of the rope marks. So that kind of falls in after the scene. They're like, "Oh, take a picture of this. Look at my rope marks." So maybe
So
a camera.
that's something everybody should have in their toy bag.
Cell phone.
A camera.
Keep your phone. keep your phone.
Well, we can't advertise that because there are a lot of play spaces and dungeons that don't allow photography inside. So
You
check
need to
your
put a rule
check
on it, but I think that
for
a
the-
camera is a solid.
Oh
Well,
yeah.
some of them don't allow wax either, but I think for your own personal toy bag, a camera is a really good idea.
And if a bottom with rope marks really wants a picture, she just goes to the bathroom, takes her own phone.
Oh, it's not the same thing.
No, it's not.
I think you should also have condoms in your aftercare bag. Just saying. Not always play condoms. You can have your aftercare condoms. too.
Okay. I see what kind of aftercare you're into.
Yeah. Okay.
But no, I like where
I
this is
didn't think about
going because we've started to double up. We've started to have things that are both for safety and for aftercare both. The blanket is dual purpose. The peeps are dual purpose. The lube is dual purpose. Well, maybe not the lube, but the condoms are dual purpose. So you can do a lot of consolidation by kind of dual purposing a lot of things in your bag.
Oh, absolutely. Alcohol swabs, those can go more than one way, too. I like that about a lot of these things. They don't have one purpose. That's why they're worth having.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you could scare your bottom with the alcohol swab too. Just like open it and take it under their nose. And what the hell's about to happen?
What do you mean?
Putting the latex glove on.
Cold.
You're insinuating a threat there. I don't make empty threats. I'm just going to throw that out there.
I'm insinuating a sensory play scenario.
How about smelling salts? That's a nice little jolt, right?
Jesus Christ.
All
was
right.
really with bed.
So I think we've pretty much covered a big area here. I think that's a pretty good list, actually. Between all of us, I think we came. I don't know if we missed anything like really essential. I don't know. Maybe people will comment on the video and think of some things that we forgot or some of the things that they feel are essential. And actually, while I'm thinking of it, I'm going to see if anybody has put in any questions or comments or.
And while
Let me
he's doing
see.
that, I'm going to throw in one more. A hood is a really good way to, much like a blindfold and the earbuds, to do sensory deprivation. Sometimes a blindfold just isn't good enough, and putting a full hood on someone just is a really good way to go to kind of disorient them. And again, they're small, they're cheap, you can fold them up, takes up no space.
It
Just
really
make sure
put
you
the
can
back.
breathe through it.
Scarf of some kind that's thick can also just be tied around. Serve pretty much the same purpose.
Hmm.
All right, panel. Thank you for contributing to that. I think we did a pretty good job handling that one. So now we're going to end this episode, and then we'll move on to our next topic. And I think I'm going to have to smoke before I go on and hit this.
Is this aftercare?
No, we're not talking about it. We're not talking. Well, it's aftercare for me. I'm like, oh, that was good. Let's have smoke now.
He really loves his technology.
Yes, I do. So I'm just going to chill for a second. Hang on, and I'll be right back, and we'll get into polyamory and kink.
Wonder how long it takes him to smoke. I could get the Hitachi. No, I'm just playing.
I thought we were all panelists anyway.
It takes about, I don't know, 90 seconds, depending on how excited.
The Hitachi
I
makes Michael to
love that innocent little look away. I do want to point out we still are live. I am imagining he's going to cut this, but just everyone just also still be aware that the little live icon is still up.
Doesn't it post automatically before he
Yeah.
does the edits?
It does, and
Yep.
I'm not cutting a single second of it. So how many seconds does it take? It's like, how many licks does it take to get to the center?
90 seconds is all it takes.
I'm not
All
touching
right.
that one.
So let us go onward and talk about polyamory in the community. Well, polyamory just in kink in general, because I think there's so much overlap. There seems to be a lot of folks, whether there are other neighboring communities that we have to the kink community where there's a lot of overlap. But let's talk about polyamory in particular. I don't know, when you're a new person walking into the community, of course, monogamy sort of being the norm in most civilized, most areas of society. Apparently not in most of the world. I read some statistic the other day that it was like, only like 19% of the world's population live in monogamous cultures. It's like, man, that sounds, I don't know. But
Well, I
there's
do
a lot.
not think that most people in kink communities are poly. I want to throw that out there because I think that tends to be kind of a misnomer. I do not think that most relationships in kink communities are poly, but I do think that the boundaries between people who engage in kink communities and kink things tend to be a little looser because there's this feeling of, there's a really deep sense of community. Plus, everyone sees each other naked pretty often, so we get kind of huggy, we get kind of familiar. Sometimes it's hard to tell who's dating and who's just familiar with each other. So I just think there's a lot of overlap because freaks tend to gravitate toward other freaks. So I think a lot of people who are kinky are poly, but not most of them.
I agree. I think the root of this overlap has more to do with this idea of well, when you're in a kink relationship or you're interested in BDSM, there are a lot of social conventions and a lot of baggage that you have to throw out. You're like, you know what? The way most relationships work, is not the way I want to conduct mine. So you kind of have to throw out the sort of normal rules and then start on a path to navigate and make your own rules, negotiate your own relationship. And I think that along with that has come for a lot of people, why do we just date each other? Why can't we see? We can negotiate anything we want. We can, as long as we're throwing out the rule book, let's throw that one out too, I guess. And I think there's some of that. But there is also, I think, when somebody's put in control, dominant, master, daddy, whatever, somebody who is supposed to be making these decisions, um, that might be one of the things that occurs to them. Well, what I say goes, so we're going to do a poly thing, and we're going to open it up, and we're going to bring other girls in, and we're going to, and I'll live happily ever after, and I'm going to have twice the blowjobs and twice the housework done, and that sort of
Nope,
fantasy speak, I
that's not how it
guess.
works.
So I think there's something like that. Why there's maybe a greater instance of polyamory in the kink community than in the other cross sections of other communities, because we've already decided to throw the rules out.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm going to add to that, and I'm going to say that people in the BDSM lifestyle also tend to be very good communicators. Um, and so it's a lot easier to go to your kink partner than to a vanilla partner and say, hey, you know what? There's this crazy thing I want to try. And that quite often leads to, no, that doesn't sound good to me, but I don't particularly want to put a bunch of staples in you, but I know a guy who does.
I don't know that we're necessarily good communicators, but I do know that we value negotiation. That there is an explicit negotiation process that happens often between people engaging in BDSM relationships, and that carries over very well to polyamory. And yeah, that facilitates good communication. I mean, I realize, but um, I just know too many kinky folks who are bad communicators to make a blanket statement like that. But I think we can all agree that um, ideally there is a lot of negotiation in a kink relationship, but there's also a lot of explicit negotiation in a poly relationship as well. And I say poly as short for polyamorous. Maybe we should talk about what polyamory means. Does anybody have before we get too far into this, a good working definition of polyamory? Come on, Wikipedia man. Aaron, I'm looking at you.
Whoa,
I mean, the most
whoa.
basic
You're always
definition.
looking shit up while we're doing this, so I
Let's
thought
not.
you'd
Well,
be
That's
right
probably going
on
to be
that.
a terrible
well, I know.
definition. On the most basic, level, we're just talking about people who are going to engage in relationships with more than one person at one time. Not necessarily everyone involved with everybody else, just people who are having partners that are different levels of, maybe they have more than one girlfriend, maybe they have, a wife and a boyfriend,
Mhm.
Different levels like that.
But key
Now,
to almost every definition that I've seen also includes with the full knowledge and consent of the other people.
Yes.
now, do we want to
Yeah, so
distinguish
it's not cheating.
between do we want to distinguish between polyamory and like a swinger lifestyle or an open relationship, or is that off topic?
I think we're
Mm,
just talking about
I don't
multiple
know.
relationships. So if you're a swinger, that's you may or may not be poly. That's kind of its own thing, but
So for
Um,
me, when I think of and I distinguish between open relationships and polyamorous relationships, and for me, poly relationships involve genuine caring, emotion, connection,
yeah, the
what
word
what what
amor.
you would consider a real relationship. Whereas an open relationship or a swinger lifestyle, it's mostly just sexual based.
What if you do both?
It absolutely could be both, and I would classify that as poly. Like if there's caring and connection and emotion involved, that's not to say that it's void of sex or void of sexual activity. It's just to me that's what escalates something from being open to
Yeah.
polyamorous.
I
Or
meant
that
like
a
what if you have
swinger.
both kinds?
Okay.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no,
Oh
that's fine.
yes,
I'm
yes, I,
I'm
I
just
agree.
saying that a swinger type, because we're differentiating swinging from polyamory, but saying that you swing doesn't necessarily mean that your swinging relationship with someone else is completely devoid of connection and feeling and so forth. It's not just sex, but we're talking about sort of a greater sense of, I don't know, commitment there, is it? Is that what we're talking
Well,
about?
there's kind of a bare minimum definition. So, in order to be classified as swinging, you have to be in one relationship and then have at least have sex with somebody else, right? There's the kind of that bare minimum there. If it starts going further and you start developing relationships, then maybe you can start using that polyamory term.
Well, and I think people will disagree on, polyamorous are watching this going, no, no, you're all wrong. And there's swingers
That was
watching
wrong.
this going, no, that's not it at all. Okay. But I think
How was that wrong?
so. So instead of saying this is truth, and let's give you the definition of it. Let's say this is what I think most people feel the separation between swinging and polyamory is, that swinging is more about sex and polyamory is more about relationships. And maybe I'll take shit for that, but bring it, because I think that's the way most people, in general, sort of delineate between the two styles of relationships.
By the way, I could totally be wrong on that. I didn't actually know. That's what it seems to me. Hearing that word, I
pull it out of
okay,
your ass. It's cool.
It seemed pretty basic to me.
So polyamory being, and a lot of people have beef with it being a hybrid word. Poly, I think, being what, Greek in its root, and amory coming from Latin. So it's like mixing Greek and Latin. So somebody came up with this word way back when. I forget the chick's name. But that's how we use the term now. Now, the thing about polyamory is, dealing with a lot of newcomers and being very community involved in our local kink community, it seems to me that there are a lot of monogamous people who feel like they need to be poly in order to get along in our community, or that they need to, hey, since I'm throwing out these other rules now in my life, it's time to throw these out too. Let's just strip all the conventions away. Or it's that they come in and say, I don't know if I belong here because I'm monogamous and everybody seems to be fucking everybody else. And that's the impression that they get because, these people play together and they have intimate time together, but that doesn't mean that they're fucking, and that doesn't mean that they have a relationship. But from appearances, from a new person coming in from, a completely vanilla background, it can appear very much that way. So let's talk a little bit about that. What is the reality of polyamory in our community?
What do you mean? What does it look like?
What are the actual stats? How many monogamous people are in the kink community? How many people are polyamorous?
Here's the thing. That's hard to gauge. I'll tell you why, Michael. You hit the nail on the head, Michael, because when you start to engage in alternative relationships, you throw out the rule book and you start to get to define your own relationships. Part of that is defining your own terms. Like, what does it mean to have a relationship? Does that mean that you live together and you're in love and you're married? Does it mean that you just see each other once a week? Does it mean that all you do is lay down and have somebody throw a flogger at you, or vice versa? Like, and each of these couples or each of these groups of people get to define their own rules in the exact same way that they get to define their own definition of what is a relationship. So it's really hard to say, who, because, if person A and person B are doing such and such activity, and person C and D are doing such and such, like the same activity, those two different couples may have different ideas about whether or not that constitutes a relationship, or monogamous, or whatever it is. So I think it's a slippery slope question. I don't think there's a good answer.
I think we tend to see a lot more open relationships than poly relationships, where in my mind, there's a difference between I date 3 people at a time and I have a boyfriend, but I play with 4 other people. I don't think those are the same. I think I see a lot more in the kink community of I have a husband at home and I play with these 3 people, and maybe I have this established, power exchange relationship with those 3 people, but I don't date them on the regular or whatever it is. I think I see a lot more of that. I think there's probably, you want us to put a number of that? I would say less than half. That's what you're trying to say, but it's
less than half are open.
Are actually poly, I think.
Yeah, I think the
versus
majority
just play
of
partners
people would be not considered poly, and then there's a less
right.
than
But to a new person that comes in from a culture,
it's going to seem like that. But I think
right.
I had an interesting conversation about this just yesterday, about a funny thing that happens, I think, for a lot of newcomers when they come into a kink community, is where you thought before that here are your options. You have boyfriend, girlfriend, lover, hookup, and friend. Those are like your 3 relationship category options, because it's complicated is a bullshit option. Don't use that. So other than those, when you come into a kink community and you see a website or you have people talking about their relationships, you almost never hear people speaking in those terms. What you hear are these things that just kind of blow your mind. So maybe you have a lover, maybe you have a husband, maybe you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Now maybe you have a master, maybe you have a dominant, maybe you have an owner, maybe you have all these other words that you can use. And all of these speak to different levels of engagement and relationships with different kinds of people. So to pick one, I think for a lot of people is overwhelming, and you don't really know how, or you identify really strongly with more than one of those relationships. And that's where I think a lot of people, new people, think that they're seeing poly relationships, but really they're seeing people who play to different degrees with different people. They have a master, they have an owner, they have a boyfriend.
I think that's very
And
accurate. And
but
not all of those things or not all of those relationships are necessarily sexual based.
Right.
yeah, but that
What
doesn't.
percentage are?
Then we get down that slippery slope of, is it a sexual relationship that constitutes a poly relationship? If it isn't about the sex, Brian, then shouldn't you be able to have poly relationships that aren't sexual?
I absolutely
If
agree, but
it's,
I was
love
actually
and commitment.
I think you should.
I absolutely agree, but I was trying to not go the other way with it, but I was trying to help the newcomer vanilla guy that walks into a dungeon the first time and understand that not everything he sees is poly or open, that there is a lot of monogamy, even if the person that is monogamous is beating someone else that is monogamous, and they are not monogamous together.
I
So they're
agree.
sexually
And
monogamous, but not play monogamous.
right. And that's the thing that gets lost, I think, on most people's impression of our community, because in let's say just mainstream everyday outside the alt community culture, in a world where watching the girl walk by a little too long will get you a slap. that is tantamount to cheating, that those kinds of expectations of, I'm your one and only and you shouldn't want anything else and we are everything to each other, that is pervasive in our culture. Maybe not in such specific ways. I'm talking about little subtle ways, and in media and in movies and in songs and in everyday interactions with people. So when you come into the kink community and you don't realize that some people separate their kink from their love, or their play from their sex, or their power exchange from their SM activities, if you don't realize that some people do separate those things, it does look like we're all just fucking each other. It looks like we're all in big grand relationships, where it's like, no, I just do rope with this person. Well, to an outside person, you're gonna what? You're gonna do rope with that girl while your girlfriend's sitting
But
right
she's
there?
topless,
Right.
and you're rubbing all over her, and but yeah, that in that context, that doesn't necessarily constitute a relationship. There's a lot of times where you don't even know the person's name, and I mean, I don't want to sound callous about it, but I mean that's
Right.
kind of the way it is.
But what I've been wrestling with is, because some people do have this impression. I've had to check myself. I'm like, are we? Like, is that what is? Are we all just like, are most of us poly, and monogamists are the minority in the kink community? I say no, but that's a very loaded no. It depends very much on how you define it, and everybody defines it a little differently. So some people, are you monogamous? Yes, we're monogamous, but we have other play partners. Some people would say, well, that's not monogamy, and other people would say, oh yeah, I get that. So
Yeah, I'm
I
just
would
going to
say-
say, as a newcomer of about 3 months into the community, first time coming in, I noticed a lot of people played with a lot of different people. It was very hard to determine the lines of the vanilla mindset of where each person's relationship started and ended. And through my experience, I've just noticed that there are a lot of different levels, and from the surface, it's just hard to tell without actually asking and talking to the person or people involved. And I very quickly have learned to make no assumptions and just let people tell me what they're doing.
I agree, and I think that's spot on. And Ray, I'm going to put you on the spot here. I saw you either 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. I saw you tie up a girl in a very nice tie. I had not seen the girl before. Just yes or no question. Do you know her first and last name?
I was waiting for Brian to be like,
Her
"What's her name, and
first
do you mind if I
and
date
middle
her?"
name.
No, no.
Number.
Ouch. First of all,
Well,
ouch.
yeah, I've got a
I
long
think
number.
that was a low blow.
No,
But
I didn't mean it that way, Brian.
do you? No, seriously, Ray. Do you know the girl's first and last name?
Yes, well, not last name. I know her first and middle name and her phone number, because we decided to text pictures back and forth, and we talked a little bit.
So you don't even know the girl's last name. Does that constitute a relationship, right? But if I had come into that party and never met you before, never seen the space before, could I have assumed that you two were together or married or in a monogamous relationship? And the answer is absolutely.
Oh yeah, because from the vanilla, the amount of trust to do what we do almost implies a relationship. Because I don't think vanillas understand that we establish a trust through a lot of communication and negotiation, which on the vanilla side takes time, takes courtship, and we just go, hey, I've met you. This kind of my portfolio. Would you be interested in playing? These are the things I want to do. What are you not interested in doing? Let's make it happen.
Right. So I realize we're off topic here, but I did think it was important to talk about kind of what constitutes polyamory, or how everyone kind of gets to decide what is monogamy, what is polyamory, what are these things.
Mm-hmm. Well, first, Emily, did you have something? Because maybe it was a little while ago. We all kind of cut you off in a big uproar, and I didn't know if did you have something to contribute, or have you forgotten it by now?
No, I remember. What I was going to say is that as a newcomer, I was a newcomer like 5 years ago at this point. I just haven't been around recently. The thing that threw me was the concept that sex and play were two separate things. And even as I explain this to my friends that are not vanilla, that practice kink, they don't understand what I mean by saying that you can have a play party and that you might not see sex happening. And I think that that's important because that I think sex definitely crosses the line for almost anybody who considers themselves monogamous. Like, you can play with other people, but whatever you consider sex, if you start having sex with other people, then you're usually in an open or swinging sort of relationship.
I agree. Sex is a delineator. That is the last delineator. Some people might have nearer boundaries, so emotional involvement or kissing or something like that. Some people might draw the line there, but almost everybody draws the line at some kind of sex, what you call sex or what you consider sex, as the line that divides monogamy from polyamory. But I think that maybe that you're hitting on something that is really what I've been trying to say and not very well, is that folks that are not used to that, their line for what they consider poly is very near.
For vanilla, it's like a one-drop rule.
It stops way before the whole sex thing. It's, texting someone. You're cheating on me with that girl because you're texting, or
yeah, that's the definition.
That you go out on a date with somebody, that they would consider that to be non-monogamous. So we all might go out on dates with each other. We might play with each other, or we might, share intimacy in other ways. And we might have sex with each other, but sometimes that's monogamous. We still consider ourselves monogamous because we have a different delineation of what makes a person non-monogamous. I still didn't say it very well.
It's a hard concept. I think you're explaining it, as well as can be explained. There's just a different mindset. There's a lot of desensitization. Is that the right word?
Yes.
And I think Josie might have hit on this. Like, we're just very familiar with each other. I might get a picture of somebody that I know might do a rope scene, and it's an awesome rope scene, and they're topless, but they are really excited about it, so they send me a picture of it. So I've got this picture of this topless girl on my phone. We're not in a relationship. We're not even play partners. It's just a different kind of interaction.
Yeah, and in a different culture, that would get you,
Divorce
slapped
papers,
and broken up.
right? Yeah.
Absolutely. But I think that's not a desensitization necessarily. I think it's very much institutionalized into the community, which tends to be it's not like there's this subset of these hedonists who run around and are just, having sex with everyone and being loose with their boundaries, all of this. I think there's very much a common, once you cease being a newcomer, I don't know, once you've been around like 3 times, you start to see that we're huggy, we're a little bit, I don't know, we compliment each other's body parts in a way that we don't think is creepy. We tend to be a lot, a lot more open with nudity, things like that. And it's not really sexual a lot of the times. It's just I'm rocking out my weirdness, and maybe my weirdness is I wear a completely inappropriately short skirt around, and I hope that you compliment me on my ass, but I don't expect you to grab it. Like, there are boundaries that are kind of different with the community, and learning the ropes with those in the beginning, I think that's what makes it seem like those boundaries are loose, when really most people have kind of a common understanding of what those things mean once you've been around it a little bit.
Well, and yes, agreed, totally. And I'm shifting gears here a little bit because something else just kind of occurred to me. With all the people like on this panel that engage in open relationships, and all the people that I know in the community in open relationships and polyamorous relationships, are we doing a bad job of do we proselytize? Are we asserting that our way is better?
No,
Because I
I
know a
don't.
lot of us feel that it's better for us, and it kind of sounds like we're preachy sometimes.
And I've said this before on the panel. I am open and out at work, and so I do have conversations with my vanilla coworkers about my relationships, and in kind of a boys' locker room setting, it all sounds good, and I get a lot of high fives. But the reality is, I tell them, hey, it's really not all it's cracked up to.
I
All
was
right.
Try adding another one in. It's exponential.
As someone who's fairly new in the community, like within a year, I was going to say that I didn't feel at all pressured for that to be a thing or for me to take on those types of relationships. For me, it just kind of naturally evolved to where I'm in a place where I'm in open relationships or practicing poly, and it just felt right, so I'm doing it. But I didn't feel like it was preachy, or that people were like, this is what you got to do to be kinky, or that this is the better way. I didn't get that perception at all.
So
Good, because that's what I was wondering.
my motto is Jay-Z is my hero, because he does this old song called 99 Problems But a Bitch Ain't One, whereas most of the time in my life I feel like I got 99 problems and bitches are pretty much all of them.
Ouch. Oh, you are sleeping alone tonight.
Yeah.
Not commenting on that one.
Not
I think
touching it.
examples of bad poly probably speak a lot louder than examples of good ones, unfortunately, because there are plenty of bad examples. For every one,
It's very
not
easy to fuck it up.
saying you are, but I'm saying, for every 10 responsible poly people, there's one, jackass, and he's the one who people see and then, for whatever reason, try to copy. I don't know why that guy is always the one people try to copy, but it is very often that guy who they think is a genius. When I came around, I never felt that pressure. I immediately felt a relaxing of my boundaries because I wanted to match everybody else, and because I genuinely felt comfortable with this idea that, okay, you don't go in here and you have one person that you try to pair up with, and that's the only person I'm going to interact with. I'm going to engage with people on different levels, multiple people on different levels, and that's going to be okay. But I never felt that pressure from poly people in the community to
And there's no pressure, but there's also an excitement to it. For instance, if you came into the community and because you had been reading spanking, you've been watching spanking porn, or you've been reading 50 Shades of Grey or whatever it is, and you think you're into floggers, you find somebody and they're really into floggers, and all of a sudden you look around you at a party one night and, oh my God, what is that? Is that fire cupping? What the hell is that? That's really exciting. I want to go try that. And the boundaries normally are such that most couples can talk that out. whether that turns into, and usually it doesn't, it just turns into a scene. But if you decide that you really have needs that your partner or partners, are not fulfilling, there's no pressure, but there is an environment that is open and conducive to you going and filling those needs, whether it is just strictly kink, whether it's emotional, whether it is both. And I think that we're open to a lot of things, much like we're open to transgenders, much like we're open to homosexuals. We're a very open community. We're also going to be open to each individual person's desires to play and express themselves in different ways that just may happen to be with different people.
I would say that when I first entered the community, I saw poly everywhere. It wasn't a bad thing. It was just, I think, maybe the event. I think the first event that I went to, everyone that I saw was with multiple people, and they were actually in poly relationships. And I had never heard the term before. I'd had open relationships since I was in early high school. Like, I always was just like, hey, we're together, but I'm going to go screw around with that other person if that's cool with you. And I never had multiple relationships. I didn't realize that there was a difference and that you could do that. And I don't feel like anyone ever proselytized it, but I did feel like I saw it everywhere when I first came around. And maybe that's because the people who were organizing things at the time were poly, but it almost seemed like there wasn't other options.
I think it's valid.
Yeah, I mean, that impression, I know where that impression comes from, and really I'm just trying to, sort of check ourselves. Of course, we're talking largely about the Louisville community, which could be different than any other community out there. And, and I just want, like, I wouldn't want somebody who is interested in kink relationships or getting involved in the kink community to feel like opening your boundaries and opening your relationship to other people is what's required in order to do this, because it's not. That's very clear. That's very clear even in our community. It's just that it doesn't necessarily seem that way when you first walk in. So what you saw, Emily, was a lot of relationships that were modeled, like poly-modeled relationships. And you might get the idea that, well, everybody's everybody's involved and it's just a big web of community incestuous relationships. I see where people would get that, but then once they get settled in a little bit, there are quite a few people in our community, and I don't really know. I don't know what the percentages are. How many are monogamous? How many are polyamorous? I think we have an extraordinary amount of polyamorous people in our community compared to a cross section of just about any other community because of. No.
I don't know. I feel like there's a feminist hippie type group in Louisville that, like, 99% of them are polyamorous.
Okay, different than let's say not including alt communities, because of course in the polyamorous community there's 100% buy-in, but your average cross section, because of those things that we talked about before, about our value that we put on negotiation, which happens to come in very handy in poly relationships, or because of the, throwing away of the conventions. But I don't know, does anybody have any other angle to this, another opinion to put forward?
No, just that I agree with you that there really isn't a pressure. You don't have to fit in, or you don't have to be poly to fit in. We do have very monogamous and very exclusive relationships in the community, and those people are accepted, just like everyone else. There are people that I've seen walk in the door that where their particular interest is I'm going to pick one at random here that I've seen recently, not to dog on anybody. Everybody's kink is their kink, but if somebody walks in the door and their primary goal or their primary kink is exhibitionism, and all they want to do is kind of take off their clothes and roll around on the ground by themselves, that's okay. But for me, that fits in less than, regardless of whether or not that person is straight, homosexual, transgendered, monogamous, poly. To me, that fits in less with what I identify to be kind of the core grounds of the BDSM community, or especially the DS lifestyle, than if two monogamous people walk in together and one of them is wearing a collar. Like, to me, those people fit in a lot better. And maybe that's certainly just my viewpoint. That is not the viewpoint of the panel or the whole community, I guarantee. But I have a great deal of respect for people that are living in and express a DS relationship, and I don't think that necessarily has to be polyamorous by any means. And it's not like I dock people points. Oh, well, I kind of like this guy, but he doesn't fuck other girls, so he's kind of a pussy, so I don't want to hang out with him.
Right.
I actually have more respect for monogamous people that are in the BDSM community because they've actually been forced to identify that they are monogamous. I feel like polyamory has to be extremely appealing to people that have grown up monogamous their entire lives. The idea of dating lots of people, and they've decided that after they've come into the community that they are going to still be monogamous, that they've actually thought it through.
Yeah, I identify, I mean, I have multiple relationships, and I actively kind of caution people against coming into the community and transitioning over to a poly relationship, especially in the beginning. I proselytize the other direction. I'm like, rah, monogamy. Only because I think that exploring these different relationship options is a great thing. I think it's one of the most amazing things that a kink community has to offer a lot of people, you know, myself included. I think that's where so much growth and learning comes about yourself, but also about the relationship that you're in. So, and I don't know. I'm trying to think of other poly people that I know. They tend to just not talk about their poly that much. I mean, you can ask them specifically. You know, I see you have two people sitting there with you, and you're all kind of friendly. Can you tell me what that's about? Most people are pretty open, but I just don't encounter that many people that lead with that foot. Like, hello, I'm Polly Dave, and I'd like to tell you all about my poly life. You don't get a lot of that, and I think it's nice. You don't, and I think it's really nice.
Yeah. Well, at least it's not one of those things where we sit down at the table with the new couple and say, "Yeah, what's going on here? Is this like monogamous?" You know.
But I do think there is kind of this funny, like, attrition thing that happens with monogamous couples, especially single monogamous people that come in. They find another person, and then they go nest. This happens with lesbians. This happens with straight people. It does not matter. It happens with everybody. They tend to nest, which also means that there's some attrition in the numbers. Okay, it looks like poly people.
Wait,
That's a very good point.
That is
That's
a very
good
good point.
Straights went and nested.
Aaron, what did you have to say?
I was asking for a definition here. They're not
A
actually building
definition of-
nests. Nesting?
Yes, they are physically building nests.
They started dating regularly together. They maybe move in together, maybe, or either way, maybe they just go off and date. But they decide they don't need the community anymore because they found their special snowflake.
Honeymoon period.
Gotcha. Okay.
You know,
So
that
leaving
is
the
a-
community is the definition.
That is an excellent point, Josie, because I do see that a lot, and it does
do too.
fuck with the numbers.
Yes.
That they come in, they pair bond with another monogamous person, and then I don't know if it's because, like, that's what they're monogamous, they found their soulmate, that they don't need anybody else or the community, they can just, but we don't see them again. We don't see them again until they break up with that person.
So, I mean, there seems to be several pieces of evidence that indicate that the being in the community is not conducive to monogamous nesting. It seems to me that I see two things. I see, one, a lot of people in the community don't want to give this idea that we're all poly in an orgy. That's not what we are, and I don't think it is. But it's also not this vanilla monogamy thing that you would see out in the stereotypical world where you can't look at a girl too long or you'll get in trouble. That kind of one drop, all or nothing thing. It's definitely not that either. So, well, I would say a lot of most of the experience kind of indicates that if you're going to do that, a really strong all or nothing thing, that you kind of nest and you go away.
Yeah,
from
but
that.
I want to be clear, Aaron, because I think you might have a cause and effect mixed up in the community. I don't think it's that the community pushes monogamous people out or makes an environment that monogamous people are uncomfortable. I think it's monogamous, the pair that Josie was talking about, they choose to leave the community because they found
Sure.
what they want and they don't really need the community anymore. So
Sure.
they go off and,
I
and do their thing.
wasn't saying it's like, oh, you two are monogamous, get out. I'm not saying that.
Right.
It's just that BDSM as a community is very friendly and open. It is. If you use the word monogamy in its traditional sense, the way that the mass majority of vanilla uses it, BDSM does not fit that definition. It doesn't. If you come in and you say, I really, really want to stay monogamous with my girlfriend, but you start coming in the community and you guys start making a whole lot of friends, there's going to be flirting, there's going to be huggy, and if that's not okay with you, you're going to have a problem. If you can't handle that,
you feel like monogamous people feel like the BDSM community is a dangerous place to stay monogamous.
Yeah, you do need to be. I see. I don't think it's wrong. It's not like people are just cheating on each other. I really think that if you look at things differently, it actually builds more trust. So in the BDSM, there is more trust, and when a vanilla person comes in, they want that trust and that bond, right? And they think, oh, well, if she's being huggy or if he's being huggy or kissy or playing or whatnot, that's endangering my connection with them, so I'm going to be upset, I'm going to be jealous, or I'm going to, be turned off about that. So there is a lot of this hugginess and this physical touch and these relationships. It's all about these relationships, but it's not gonna damage or undermine the trust. You can have very trusting, even more so trusting relationships within this community that tends to be very huggy and touchy and making a lot of relationships than outside. So if you're vanilla and you're really into monogamous and you want trust, understand that you can come into BDSM and you can have that really strong trust. You can have even more. Okay, I was in college. I had a professor that was teaching a marriage and family therapy course. It's called the SALT rule. SALT. So any kind of openness, any kind of additional relationships will make a strong relationship stronger or make a weak relationship weaker. It's like salt. If you add salt to a food, it makes it better. If you add salt to a wound, it hurts. So if you have a strong relationship with your wife or your partner, you come into the BDSM community, you're going to end up with a stronger relationship. But if you have some weaknesses and you're worried and you're scared and you tend to get jealous and you don't know if you can trust that person and you start coming into a BDS community, you guys are going to have problems. That's going to get worse. That's going to be exacerbated.
I think any relationship with issues is going to experience that. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I'm a poly person, and I think coming into a kink community is still going to throw up a lot of, issues if you're going to have issues.
Yeah, I agree with I think the gist of what you were saying there, but I think that it's not necessarily those people are going to have problems, and if you are a person that would object to this sort of openness that we seem to have in the kink community, whether it's, nudity of people of the opposite gender around your guy or, people talking to your girl, yeah, you probably aren't going to fare very well in the BDSM community. But people who, embrace that or at least know which boundaries they can set for themselves in that regard. Like, hey, you can talk to me, but if you touch me like that, he's going to be upset. We respect those boundaries, and we're pretty good about that. But you're right. If you're if you're a jealous monogamous couple and you come into the BDSM community, it will probably cause a
That
lot
girl
of
that
problems
slaps you
for
for
you.
looking too long, don't bring her here. She's not
Yeah,
going to do well. That's
yeah.
going to be real bad for her. Don't bring
Well,
her
We
here.
have a different way.
a cool thing can happen too there. I'm really close to some people that have been married. They've been married for 20 years this year. And it was really funny. I was talking to him this week, and he was saying that coming into community saved his marriage. And I was like, really? What? Explain some of that to me. And one of the things that they found in community was that they could go into this place where boundaries are it's acceptable, it's common, it's encouraged that some boundaries are a little bit relaxed. And he was saying how much fun it was that he was sitting there with his wife and they could both just totally check out everybody that was walking past and they could both look. If you're
It's
in a
quite healthy.
restaurant, maybe that's less, but they were looking like that girl's
Mm-hmm.
looks really good. And then she was like, yeah, she looks great. And they were doing it together. It becomes like
Mm-hmm.
a thing you do together. Same as getting a hobby or, so I think that saying a kink community is dangerous to a monogamous couple, maybe for some, but for a lot of people, it's a really cool place to extend the way that you thought you understood someone and also your range of things that you do together. A lot of
And if you want to test it out, go to a strip club. I think no, I really do. I
Is
think
that
that's
the
a really good test.
crucible? Is that the
That's
crucible
an
of?
interesting test.
similar.
It's gonna
Interesting
go. It's gonna go
litmus.
one way or the other, and
Right.
the way that it
If
goes
the
is gonna
wife is
tell
going to be
you.
super jealous,
Get that litmus
she's going to be
string.
super jealous at the strip club. Or if you be fair about it, go to the Chippendales. Go to
I was gonna
the
say you
male
have
strip
to
club.
at least go to the male
Yep.
strip club then too,
Yep.
don't you?
Yep.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Or the gay strip club if you're in a gay relationship, fine, whatever.
So
But no, I think no, all good points. I think we can be done with this. At least we might revisit polyamory as far as in personal relationships, but this was just something that I've been thinking about. Do we need to check ourselves? Why is it that people have these perceptions of the community? I think there's some validity to it. There's a reason why, but I feel pretty good that that it's still a good thing. Like we're not outlawing monogamy in the community. Um, so thank you, panel, for logging in and being a part of this. We're going to go ahead and shut down the broadcast, and we'll see everybody who tuned in. Quite a few viewers this time. Thanks for checking in with us. We'll check back in with you in about 2 weeks. So good night.